Hey there. What's going on?
How you doing over there, Jim? Are you ready to record?
Yeah, the one is going already, and the backup will start.
All right, I'm going to, let's call to order the, Planning and Zoning Commission, which is Captain Hills, Wednesday, May 13th. And, a roll call, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Anderson? Here. Chairman Frederick? Here. Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Kopeck?
Here.
Commissioner Lorario? Commissioner Teat?
Here.
We also have the village attorney present. Microphone's on? Yeah.
Thank you. All right, motion to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the regular meeting last month of April 8th, 2026. I had no comments.
So moved.
Mr. Kopeck has moved, second?
Second.
Andro has seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries, no, as approved, as stated or presented. All right, public comment, seeing nobody from the public here. Item 4 would be no public comments. Item number 5, public hearing, case 2605, the zoning text amendment to section 3.6 of the PUD, or planned unit developments, and Article 14 in definitions. All right. Since nobody's here, I just have a motion. I don't have to normally do a roll call, but but there's really nobody here, so.
Right.
Can I just have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay. How about you first, and me second?
I'll second.
Mr. Teet, the second, Mr. Kopeck first. Okay. Discussion concerns, otherwise I'll vote. All those in favor to open up the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. Motion has approved. All right, so you have, your packet was mailed to you, and I think if you did not see your email, there was an amendment sent to you, which is in front of you here today. Was it just a little bit of changes on there? We'll get to that. I just kind of like to go through, start at the top of the document and kind of work our way down. This is towards the end of it, and then we can talk about that and the changes that were added there, if that's all right. All right, so part of this all came to light after our original PUD application and everything, and things didn't go, I would say, as smoothly as we would like to have gone, and there were some issues that we found along the way. I asked Mr. Brown to compile some suggestions for improvements to the process, and this is one of the improvements to the ordinance that we're making. So he's presented his the current ordinance that we have and suggested changes. And the way I would summarize the majority of this is clarity, is definition and also some clarity. Which I think adding some things that was not even addressed, like minimum open space standards. So if we look at the page, the first page of his charted, the bottom of the, so it says page 1 of 1 of his memorandum. But if you go to the next page, it has the 3 columns in it. Like minimum open space standards, there was no minimum standard in the PUD for open space, so it kind of added that in there. And it talks about statements of ownership and options, so. One quick question on the next page is talked about SSA. Sometimes we assume what an SSA is. Is it defined anywhere in this document? I know it's a special service. Is it defined at all? Because it just talks about restricted covenants, SSA, and then statement lacking SSA, but I didn't know if it was defined anywhere.
I can't remember. I mean, we can add it.
Yeah, if, I think we should at least investigate it
Yeah.
first and see if it's not defined. I just don't want people to assume. I mean, people who are.
Yeah, we can add that, and I'm sure the village attorney has a good definition.
Yeah.
Already.
I'll
Yeah.
take a look to see first if it's defined.
And I know we use it a lot, but, not
Yeah.
everybody does, so.
Too
Okay.
far beyond couple of these things. When it comes to the minimum open space standard, for example, I think one thing that's important, that it does not include land that is undevelopable to start with. So in other words, you should have a standard for the land you have that is developable, and use that as your guide as to what percentage you want to have or whatever, versus counting something that couldn't be developed anyhow. Because you could have a case where, let's say you have a lake, and, 100-acre property, you say you want to have 40% open space, and the lake takes up, 50 acres. Well, that would meet that minimum, I would not assume, but that couldn't be developed anyhow. So that was always sort of the thing I remember running up against in this thing, that they say, well, we want to have all this open space, but then it wasn't necessarily, there wasn't a thing that was limited to what could be developed versus what wasn't developable in the first place, and also that's why I was wondering if there's.
Well, I think, go ahead.
idea with that.
Yeah, I recall hearing that, those arguments about the undevelopable land, but I thought that was always in reference to the developer's contribution of a land cash ordinance or something to the effect is that you couldn't donate something that couldn't be, that was basically wasteland. So I don't recall it being, part of the calculation, but it being restricted towards what could be developed, what could be donated. So that's the context I recall. But I mean, you've got, like a wetland can't be developed, but they can always be maintained as, open space.
I guess part of that would be the green infrastructure plan. The green infrastructure plan would delineate, high functional places that would say we can't develop in those areas. Or if they are, they have to be mitigated. So I think that's kind of the tool that we use for, making sure that they're using the land appropriately. It's like you have a nice tributary or whatever, and it's like, hey, that's, we've got this green infrastructure program, there's this corridor, and then either if it's, how it's categorized would determine whether it's developable or what types of mitigations would be allowed. That's my understanding of the
That's,
tool.
I mean, if you look at, like, next door here, I mean, part of that was, like, okay, there was land there that could have been developed, but it was required to be open space. Now, I don't think they were counting, retention ponds or the creek bottom and things like that itself, and all. So that's where I want to be sure the percentage isn't being applied, like you say, okay, like the standard sort of has been like 40%. I know we're hitting some as high as 50 or whatever, but if it's 40%, that I don't want to see it including land that couldn't be.
I don't think, are we getting into the details and the weeds about how much percentage and stuff? I don't,
Well, I didn't add that in.
Yeah.
I left that out. We do have a comprehensive plan that provides some guidance on open space. I mean, I've seen PUD ordinances that do have a percentage in. As I stated in that little chart, this draft doesn't include it. But I did want to at least offer it for discussion. But the point that Commissioner Johnson brings up, I think, is valid, because if a developer came and included the swath of right-of-way for a high-tension power line and call it open space, I think that would be inappropriate.
yeah,
Something like that.
right.
Something like wetland, I think that could count as open space. It's essentially undevelopable, but I think it's something you don't want to drain or alter, so I think that would be a valid contribution for open space.
I just don't like the idea of making economic value out of something that shouldn't be, basically, and all, and, because, so that's where, to me, the whole concept of, if you're gonna do clustered housing, part of the fact is you're creating open space where you otherwise could put housing, and all. So that's, things that figure into that. It's not just.
I could see a mix of that too, because I could also say, well, you have to provide stormwater retention and drainage and that kind of stuff too. It's like, well, I have to do that. I probably wouldn't build there anyway, but I have to use that for drainage, so that would be part of it. So it's kind of hard to say.
Well, no, if a retention's pond required for the development, that's a thing, that's a whole different thing, the
Yeah.
stormwater issue, I wouldn't regard that as, land that should be counted towards the open space quota, that's something. In other words, it's sort of like, you have to have seat belts in a car, all right. There's certain rules and regulations that go with things, and, you can't count those towards, you know, you can't call a seat belt, well, that's a luxury item or something, you know. I'm trying to think of
Yeah,
what I mean.
I know what you're trying to say.
It's how do you,
You've just got like
How
100
do you
acres of
get
flat
something-
farmland, you know, 100 acres of flat farmland, and you're trying to say, hey, well, I guess, this is developable, it's all developable. So you have to give developable land, you know, as part of the open space. I guess the simplistic part, that would be that way.
I think maybe, you know, a lake, the public can use that, the residents can use that, but detention ponds, they can't. So that's how I would look at it. Just, you know, a
But
pond,
residents could
you
use a
know,
detention basin. They could construct a detention basin so it's deep enough and that it has fish and other wildlife, so kids could fish in it. I mean, maybe you don't sail in it or water ski in it, but I think a concern I have is if we're starting to define, or I guess the question is, who defines what's considered developable? Because you can, with the right permissions, develop a wetland. You can buy in a wetland bank, and you can plow that wetland under if you get it approved. You can develop in a floodplain if you get the right permissions and you provide compensatory storage somewhere else on the property. So to say, my concern is, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but you know, you have 100 acres and you got 40 acres is a wetland or something, and maybe it's a low-quality wetland, and the Army Corps doesn't care about it, nobody cares about it, it's a farm wetland, so you plow that under, but who makes that determination? Because I think we could open ourselves up to some issues unless we clearly define, you know, any wetland, but then you gotta get into the weeds of, because you're gonna have a developer say, well, what quality wetland is it? You know, I mean, at what point does it stop, I guess, is all I'm saying. You know, because,
well, I think if you do have this thing, okay, we're going to only allow PUDs, to have a minimum of X amount of open space, okay, so you have that as a standard right there, but it can't include the sewage retention lagoons, all right? Things like that, that are just, that would come with the problem of developing that property. So that's where I'm, you know, I don't wanna just have the public getting stuck with the discarded property as far as, you know, the economics would look at something, you know, that's where, if we're going to, you know,
So maybe something in a general term would be, say, it's like you have, say, 40% open space. But however, that open space shall, you know, it has to be kind of usable by the community, you know.
I'm not
just
worried
like-
about the use, the ultimate use, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying, but I don't wanna see like, you know, like something like the sewage system to be counted as open space.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
Or
it's-
whatever.
I used to say passive, it has to be used for passive recreation, something where that sewage lagoon, you're not gonna be using for passive recreation, yeah, type of thing. And I kinda get, it's a little bit hard, I can kinda see where Chris is coming, because I could see too, if you had high-tension power lines coming through and they just put a bike path under that, or they say, hey, that's all over our open space, and well, that's not really, I mean, it is open space, and it is usable, but it's not what I would consider, you know, a quality open space.
Well, and remember, the concept of open space with the clustered housing is that you want to get away from that, just a checkerboard blanket of
Right.
houses.
Right.
We want to have, okay, we're going to
Very
concentrate
familiar with
something
it,
here,
yeah.
and then we've got, you know, so that land is typically developable in that, and that's where, you know, like the county's been using sort of that 40% kind of benchmark, it seems like, or it's sort of been, that's been what's been established in the region.
Well, since this is all, is specific to a PUD, I mean, isn't that in the ultimate acceptance of the PUD, whether or not they count? You know,
It's all
we allow them
negotiated,
to
right?
count it or not.
It's all negotiated.
Yeah, it's negotiated, so I would say just, you know, leave it, you know, vague and let the developers and the
Right.
authorities, figure out what's appropriate. It's a PUD, it's not a, standard zoning.
Right. I think what we could do is include a statement that any open space donation should have some aesthetic, environmental, or ecological benefit.
Yeah,
That's another word I can throw in there.
Oh, but with that, though, you gotta be
Ecological
careful,
covers a
because you
lot.
could, I mean, if you're concerned about stormwater basins, you could do a high-quality wetland as a stormwater basin as well, so then, is that open space or not?
Right.
You know, it meets the intent of the stormwater ordinance, but at the same time, it also, you can provide a high-functioning wetland,
Yeah.
so, and, which I'm okay with, but I just, sometimes, and I agree with what you're saying, is you leave it a little vague, because with the PUD, it's all negotiable, and if we don't like the amount, or the village board doesn't like the amount of open space, they're gonna tell them, no, make more open space, we want this, we don't want that, because it's a PUD, it's all.
And I guess our comprehensive plan kind of talks about that, more clustered housing and that kind of that goal, that of development, so.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that makes me
Yeah.
nervous about PUDs in general is just like, okay, then it also doesn't prevent you from coming in and say, well, we're gonna make it basically a commercial district, and all.
So Fox Mill,
that's-
you're saying that was 40%?
Yeah. That's how they build
If we
it.
don't like what we see, then you raise it to 45%. I think you gotta have some kind of a guideline, I don't know. They're gonna come in and they're gonna need something to go by.
I mean, but at the same token, that 40% number, I think, should be negotiable or kept vague, because, maybe it's only 20%, but it happens to be a very high-quality forest in the middle or something. So there's, other, mitigating circumstances that, maybe the 40% isn't a.
Well, it's just a guideline.
But if
I
we,
would just call it a guideline, 40%'s a guideline.
or if we say typically 40%, or, something of that nature where we're not trying to nail it down. Again, it's all negotiable, it's PUD.
What did we end up in the Fox then? How much?
50.
It's about,
Yeah.
50-something.
yeah, it's also just to be sure that, if you have some out-of-state developer come in and just looking, well, it's all land's equal, acreage is acreage, versus, the local developers that already know that, oh, well, Kane County, if you're gonna go there, you're gonna have to do this and this, kind of thing. So you don't wind up with investors who then get hot and heavy, and, you have a 1,000-acre parcel come along or something like that, and some big money behind it, and it's out of your area money, and you don't have much control or influence
So
over
are
it
we looking to annex more land?
and all. Well, no, I'm just trying to think of like, what was the purpose of trying to add open space into our developments in this region? And, because quite often you'd get, I remember back in the old days, you get developers coming in, they'd just say, well, it's, 100 acres, you should be able to develop every square inch of it with half-acre lots, kind of thing.
So what would
So how do you be sure, if you can put something up front, be sure that they see this before they
What would
get
we
too
do
deep.
with the 1,000 acres of the Fisher Farms? If the developer came forward?
Well, that's just,
That's
I
already
mean,
in the
there's,
village.
yeah, there's a case where there's a potential
Oh,
for PUD right off the top
Right.
that somebody'd push for.
Why don't we just put 50% if that's what the Fox was?
Well, I think if we aren't comfortable with the numbers we've seen, then we raise it.
Yeah.
And that still can be negotiated. It isn't like, at least that's.
Right, it's a starting spot. Why don't we just put in 50%?
And does that 50% or 40% that was used, does that look at the parcel in aggregate, or does it exclude this wetland and this detention basin, and, I mean, how is that 50 or 40% derived? Because I think that's a huge thing. If you have 100 acres and 20 acres is wetlands or things that potentially could be developed if you get the right permissions, but now all of a sudden you're saying, well, 50% of the, of that 80 acres or 50% of that 100 acres, that's I mean,
Well, I think you gotta stay with just 50%, but power lines don't count. Something like that doesn't count. That's how I would look at it.
Rather than getting a long list of things that do and don't.
Right.
You know, that's what I'm trying to avoid, but it's
Yeah.
a good point.
That's why I said that one
Right.
statement's just very general,
Yeah.
looking at the benefits that an item classified as open space would bring.
Yeah, and
So a
it's,
power line would not have any aesthetic or
Yeah.
ecological value.
Right.
I mean, that'd be a hard argument.
yeah. And then just put in 50%. I think you just say 50% would be 50% of the total property. You know?
well, that's, I was just curious with
Yeah, I would
the
just
ones
say
that like.
50% of the
the
total
Fox,
property.
what, is it 50% of the total property or 50% of usable area?
Yeah.
When you come up with those numbers, that's, I was just curious.
Because I think we're thinking about that, because we know there's wetlands and hills and whatever, but,
Exactly.
so if you have 100 acres, you got 50% of it's open, you can develop 50 of it. So I think that's,
That way you don't have to have these line items.
right, right,
You're just gonna get into trouble.
I think so. And you're not gonna be able to get all done. Yeah, Andrew.
And I'm kind of going back, because I deal with it a lot in the construction, as when you have, you know, with residential too. But don't you think 50% is a bit high? I mean, I'm
It is.
used to
It
dealing
is.
with a lot of municipalities where it's 35 to 38%. And even at 40%. Because here's the thing, it should be 35, 38%, and yes, wetlands, if part of the wetland encroaches on that property, forget about it, if it's a decent wetland or not decent land. If it's wetland, that should be already part of that percentage of that 35, 38%, because it's already known that it's not going to be built on. Now, we get into power lines, I mean, if you're a developer and you're coming from out of town or in town and you're that dumb to build an air power line, God bless you, but we can make certain I think you know, you had mentioned a list, and I think what happens is you almost have to have, or will end up with some kind of a list of certain items, and then kind of creates the discussion. But to me, it just seems like 50%, it seems high.
I know
Well,
what you're
remember, you're
saying, but.
doing this as a PUD though.
Right, I get
You
it.
know, so
right.
it's a special deal to start with.
Yeah.
It's easier to go down than it is to go up. And so we could end up at 40, depending on a certain
So
property.
so what you're saying, we'll pick a number, but make it all negotiable. We could end
Well,
up at 20%.
I guess if we picked a number too high, we're pushing everything into a PUD then,
Right.
which I don't know if that's what we want to do either. I mean, you know,
You're
we wanna-
also, so the developer's gonna do a pro forma, and they're gonna have what they call a yield, that's their number of homes. So,
Absolutely right.
so then what happens is the lots get smaller and smaller,
Yeah.
which
And-
is something that I don't think,
But like Fisher Farms, they would have to build, well and sewer.
Well, that
So,
already
and that-
has,
And that probably wouldn't happen then.
but because of that already has a built-in, sort of like a guard, if you will, that you have to do with sewer or well, and so you're already limited to the size of the lot, what it can be and can't be anyway. But what he's saying is that if we limit it, now all of a sudden, they come in and we get a bunch of clusters with these, little lots, looks like, what's it called in Geneva, over there, Mill Creek, all on top of each other. So, I'm just saying, I don't know, will 50% scare people away? It just seems like a high number, but if you guys are saying that there's gonna be negotiations no matter what, it sounds like we're creating a whole system of just one mass negotiation.
We're specifically relating to PUDs.
No, I
So,
get that, I understand.
Yeah, so we're
that,
not
right.
taking, like, how we're
Right.
developing all the property out there. We're specifically looking at the ordinance as it relates to PUDs. So if we do have a PUD in front of us, how do we want to deal with that?
Yeah.
But it would have to have sewer.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean,
that's gonna
I mean,
limit.
theoretically, yes.
It's
I mean,
gonna limit.
yeah, I mean, you could do a PUD with 3-acre lots.
yeah.
Well,
You know,
true,
but-
I mean, the
Yeah,
small lot issue
right,
though wouldn't
absolutely.
happen because
Right,
absolutely.
they need sewer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't, 45%, 50%, that makes no difference to me. I think I would just think if we just approved or are in the process of approving a
Right.
Fox, then why would we mirror what we just approved?
And we have Fox Mill, which is
Yeah.
also in the
Right.
plans.
Right. So,
So,
I mean,
50%.
you know, I mean,
Well, if the Fox is 50%, roughly.
well, I guess that would, yeah, that would be, like, do we have a number on that? I mean, we can get the number, we can get the number.
Yeah,
but
but-
let's just start with 50, and then we can always just try to match that and-
Yeah.
and match the Fox. And just say, okay, just make it equal in the next guy.
Because, you know,
Because then it's
hopefully,
fair.
Yeah, you can say, well, this guy did it with 48%, you can do it with 48%.
hopefully we don't have much in the way of any more PUDs or anything like that to start with,
Yeah,
but,
probably
you know.
unlikely, unlikely, but, yeah. Okay, I think we beat that one pretty well. All right?
And so what's the consensus?
I think consensus was 50%, but I would like to match La Fox. I think we'd like to match La
Fox
Fox.
or,
I think that was
The
50.
Fox of Captain Hills.
49,
Yeah.
51, something like that,
So,
yeah.
but that was of all the property,
Yes,
correct?
yeah.
so all the property, all the property. Then you can put your statement of aesthetic, you know, I can't,
Yeah,
like that. Okay. All right? Okay, moving along. Does anybody want to bring anything out? I thought it was very well, a lot of good information here. It just added, I think timing of improvements I thought was a good thing, which is below the SSA on the second page, which doesn't really have a number on it, but understanding that as things get developed, then, you know, certain improvements have to go along with that, which makes sense with
Right.
something like Shodine here is going to be doing it in phases, so you have to have certain things done.
For the village attorney or Commissioner Teat, well, for anyone really, the list on page 20 of required documents, is anything missing from that?
Oh, no, skipping
Middle of
ahead.
the red on page
Skipping
20.
ahead. Also, PUD preliminary plan,
Yeah.
item number 3.
Then other items can be added, but,
Item 4, you missed a P in preliminary.
okay.
Preliminary,
Preliminary.
instead of preliminary.
It's pretty comprehensive. I mean, you have the catch-all at the end.
Other.
Yeah, and
You've
there's
got-
also a statement in paragraph B that, you know, we could delete items too. So if there was really no need for a traffic impact study,
Or a tree survey,
or a
there's no
tree
trees
survey,
on there or
or a
something like that.
cornfield.
One other item that might be beneficial, especially for the larger ones, is a phasing plan if applicable.
Okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
Because then at least when you're, you know, as you're moving forward, approving and looking at things that from a preliminary level, you get an idea of, okay, this would be phase 1, potentially
Right.
phase 2, and
Yep,
around, you know.
okay.
And that certainly can change because it's preliminary, but just to kind of help
Yeah.
give a better understanding of how the whole site might be developed.
That's a good point.
And that could also be under the other items as applicable too. but-
Sorry, I just wanted to get that before I forgot.
Yeah, okay.
We gonna
Um,
back up.
Yeah, back up, we did SSA, timing events, and then additional conditions. Just basically adding new paragraph here. But just as such, conditions may be more stringent requirements for construction, design, materials, phasing, and revocation. So, added that. There was a pre-application consultation, that was just clarifying, once again, clarifying the stage of approval process. It's not a public meeting.
I put that in because
Yeah.
I have had residents who were upset that they weren't invited to the staff meeting.
Okay. And just changing the language then, PUD, preliminary plan plat, so just changing preliminary and final, because that got a little bit confusing, so that was a clarification as well. And then defining what constitutes a preliminary or final plat. Like I said, a lot of this is all just really clarifying what's it.
The one question I have is you got that a concept plan is required before preliminary, but for something really small, you know, there are some situations where, I mean, I could see on a much larger subdivision, it's a great tool, but I feel we're not gonna have a lot of larger PUDs. We may have many more small PUDs. Are we gonna, you know, force an applicant to go through that? I mean, we could certainly, the suggestion would be, you know, that it's, at the discretion of you, or, you know, I mean, or given the option to, if applicable, because there are some instances where a small PUD application, a concept plan is not a waste of time, but it's just,
Yeah.
it extends that entire review process. And I've seen it too, where you could combine concept and preliminary together,
Yeah.
almost. But to clearly state, you know, concept first, then preliminary, it just,
Yeah, yeah, sure, I can change, must or shall to may.
yeah.
In that sentence, before submitting a formal application for a plan unit development, the applicant may present a concept plan?
I would say encouraged or something. I would like,
All right.
I do remember we had off of Harley Road, we had a PUD, I think it had maybe 10 units in it, I think it was. So it was a PUD, and it was basically cut in half, and then they put like 10 units. And so I could see a small, like you're saying, a small thing like that could happen. But,
All right, encouraged.
or maybe at the determination of the zoning officer.
Yeah,
You know,
something like that.
it's a, you know, it's like, yeah, so it says, you know, at the determination, a concept plan may be required. But at the
Okay.
determination of the zoning officer, a concept plan may be required.
Okay. Yeah.
That way he can make the decisions, like, yeah, for whatever reason, we're doing the PUD because of X, Y, Z reason, it's only three lots.
It's clearer that way, because if we just write
Yeah.
may, you'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
so do I need it or no?
Yeah.
Which is it? Yeah.
Okay.
Most developers aren't necessarily opposed to presenting a concept plan, I mean, particularly for larger ones.
Yeah, oh,
It
yeah.
kind of
Right.
smooths out
Yeah.
the process.
Well, they get some feedback too, they get feedback on that as well.
Yeah, before they invest too much.
Right,
into
right.
A larger.
Yeah,
more
like
exact-
to do this here, that's like, that's good, so, all right, so that kind of gets through the table, I thought, for me personally, unless someone else had some other, things, I think what we'll do just real quickly, before we go through every single page of all the red line items, but, it's on front of us, page, the sheet in front of you, page 21. If you have that, it looks like the paragraph I, let's see, I think it's that paragraph II, there's the second paragraph there. So the red line in there basically saying that the Planning and Zoning Commission shall also take into consideration any reports or reviews by village staff and consultants, village engineer, planning and arborist. And this is all under the guise of
So, background on this, because I don't think I've ordered it to the commission.
preliminary plan.
So, the ordinance that we have now, and I'm surprised I didn't catch this or no one else caught it, said that the village engineer will make the recommendation to the village board. And it really should be the Planning and Zoning Commission, based on input from engineer, planner, arborist, traffic, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I modified, you know, this draft before us, and then our consultant engineer, I believe, was fearful that the input of an engineer was being totally cut out. So I said to explain, no, there'll still be. So I added this paragraph, again, to clarify, maybe assuage some fears that he has, and he understood that it was not being cut out. There's still the opportunity for
Input.
input
Yeah,
and
right.
presentations and statements and whatever the case may be. So, and that's, language is in both the preliminary and final stages of approval, that the Planning and Zoning Commission shall consider any reports that are generated.
All right. And then at the bottom of that page 21, that was, I think, something we dealt with recently, just with the last PUD, talk about all open space should be platted as outlots. I think that was added in there. Restrictive covenants running with the land shall guarantee that open space shall be properly cared for and used for only for the purposes designated in the PUD's approving ordinance. So, that was, and then SSAs may be established for maintenance of the open space. That was all new. And then, on page 22, I think a lot of it was the, just as Jim explained, action of the, 4A, like action by village engineer, which really action by the PZC. That's where he clears up the fact that the PZC is actually making the recommendation, not that the village engineer hasn't had input, but that's where the PZC is actually making the recommendation.
One recommendation maybe that I had with open space ownership and maintenance, and maybe it's handled in the covenants, but I would somewhere require a backup SSA. Unless, when you talk about your special service area, is that going to be for the HOA, or is that, my point is, if you get a backup SSA, it exists, so if the HOA doesn't do the maintenance,
Yeah, you're talking
then the
about
village
dormant,
has the
yes.
authority to enact an SSA to do the maintenance after notification, and then they can recoup those costs through taxes, or through through the backup SSA. Because in that way, at least the village doesn't, they'll get made whole at some
Sure,
point.
like a dormant SSA is what
Yeah.
I thought.
Sure.
Yeah, I can add that in as well.
Yeah. And like I said, if that's something that would always be required in the covenants, wherever, I think it's always important, just to,
Just for my own ignorance, an SSA is different than a backup SSA, or is that like two separate SSAs? So there would be an SSA for, and then there would be a separate SSA?
Well, it's just the activation of it technically. So it's, if you, if it's kept dormant and there's a third party that's performing the necessary maintenance or whatever purpose of the SSA, if it would have been active, as long as they're continuing to do that, then there's no need for the village to activate it, because the HOA, let's say if it's common areas.
Yeah, they're taking care of it.
They're taking care of common areas, stormwater, whatever it might be, but sometimes HOAs just, they can't stay in the black, or they just decline to do certain things, so you'd activate it. The village would have the absolute right to activate it without the authority, without seeking the authority of the HOA. You'd obviously give them notice and tell them they have time to cure their default. If they don't, the village can unilaterally turn the switch on, perform the needed work and levy against those properties for the work.
So it's more of
It's
a,
harder to go back later and
Yeah.
establish one. if it
so
hasn't
it's
been
more
activated.
terminology
51%.
than, the backup, it's basically just
Well,
making it
yeah,
dormant.
I mean,
It
it's-
is an SSA, but it's like you
Yeah.
say, it's just dormant, it's just not being used, and then it gets either, it's just
Right.
terminology,
And
okay.
it's best to get the backup SSA enacted when the developer still owns the land.
Right.
Because once you start getting all the homeowners or the separate property owners, you have to have 51% approval from all of those owners that the backup SSA can be created, where you have the developer's attention, he'll do it,
Right,
and he's the only one who
Right.
owns everything,
right,
so.
right.
There's less of a chance for an objection,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So you want to get those like right in the beginning, before, once it's platted, you want to you get the subdivision plat approved, you get it signed, you get the backup SSAs in place, and then you start issuing building permits. Because once you start getting past that, it can get.
And then when the people buy their lots or their homes, they're buying into
Mhm.
the fact that there's a dormant SSA there already. They may not realize it
Right.
at the time, but
So does this need to be reworded, or is it just? the way it's
I'll
going?
put at the special service area or dormant SSA.
Yeah, okay,
I think
or
both.
dormant, okay.
I'll put both
Yeah,
in.
I'm a little confused, or maybe concerned about the way it's the restrictive covenants running with the land.
Where are you?
Bottom of 21?
Bottom of 21. It says restrictive covenants running with the land shall guarantee that open space shall be properly cared for and used. Who is establishing those covenants? Is this something that you assume is there with the land before, or they're written into the purchase agreement, or where are those covenants established?
We would have it through an annexation agreement or PUD ordinance that would be put in.
So you're saying
Runs
restrictive
with the
covenants
land itself.
shall be established running with the land.
Yeah.
This sounds like they're already there when the developer buys the land.
Well, this is all under preliminary plat, right? So it's under the title of preliminary, PUD preliminary plan and plat.
Yeah.
So the way I would see it, that if it would have to be,
Well, covenants
that would have to be part of that, right?
Yeah, I could say, I could say
be
restrictive.
established, running with the land as
Yeah.
Established, yeah.
recorded in the deed.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference if the covenants are there on land that's been purchased versus covenants that are written in as part of the PUD.
So established? Okay,
Yeah,
good
Plus,
catch.
in theory, any covenants that predated it would be enforced too.
right, exactly.
So they wouldn't supplant that unless
Right.
if they had been disbanded beforehand, before, whatever.
All right. Then we can always go back and stuff, into other things, but, you know, the next page, 23, it's like the timing of improvements, that was in the header above, it talked about. That was a new section that was added, under item H. Talked about, not more than 20% of dwelling units in development or prior to completion of the first 50 dwelling units, whichever comes first. Talked about construction of the recreational facilities and other improvements to open space shall be completed prior to the issuance of building permits for the next phase. And the last few pages are basically just adding PUD and plat into the last few pages. Other concerns or?
And when I first started reading all this again, I had to go back and look at what is the definition of plat? Because it is complex. And it's not a map, it's not a plan, it's not a design, it's basically a compilation of, you know, a surveyor's map plus all the improvements and everything else. And even when you read the description, a legal description of plat, it leaves a lot to be, you know, understood. So if we could include a definition of plat, it may, you know, alleviate some, you know, questions or fears.
It's not in our ordinance now? I mean, the Plat Act defines what a plat is, I would think.
I don't know.
I can just follow
I don't know if that's in our definitions.
Or you could just reference it. There's a-
from there. I can do it.
Yeah, reference on a plat.
Plat survey? Do we have it, Carmen? You looking it up?
It's not in the zoning, it's not. doesn't
No.
understand.
Might be, is it in the subdivision ordinance? Well, I mean,
Preliminary plat is fine.
okay.
Not plat. Preliminary drawing or drawings and all accompanying information required in this chapter, including proposed manner of layout of the subdivision. Let's see, proposed manner, yeah, no proposed manner of layout of the subdivision.
All right.
but
You
that's
wanna look at it,
preliminary.
or we can look at it?
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
I'm looking at the plat act here to see if there's.
yeah, that's probably too confusing.
There was a special service area definition, I think I just sent it to you.
Okay, all right, good,
In the
thanks.
special service area tax law. not
Okay.
act.
Okay.
All right, other comments or concerns, questions? Hearing none, so shall we close the public hearing? All right,
So moved.
okay, we have a motion, Mr. Teet, to close the public hearing, a second.
Second?
Okay, Mr. Kopek, it's saying that there's nobody here. A voice vote, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, okay. Motion is approved to close the public hearing of 2605. Okay, now, motion to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment, which we just went over, section 3.6, the PUD, and Article 14 definition. So can I have a motion to recommend approval?
So moved.
Mr. Teaton makes the recommendation. Second? Second, Mr.
And that-
Anderson?
And that motion would be with the changes as discussed this evening.
Thank you. So that motion
I would
to
agree with
recommend
that.
approval with amendment, okay? He amended his motion. So that's what we just talked about. Discussion, any further discussion? I didn't have any problem with the definition, which is the second portion of the very last page, but it sounds pretty standard to me for measuring the definition of a tree for diameter purposes, so. All right, well, if we have no other discussion, let's have a roll call to recommend, actually, let's just have a voice vote to recommend the motion that we just had for amending the text amendments of the ordinance, the zoning text as amended, okay? All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to recommend approval. Thank you. Item number 7. Jim, do you want to start that one up?
Yeah, I just threw this out. Anything that I could start working on, any priorities. We rezoned 500 properties. We took the big subdivisions. There are smaller properties that are obviously residential that are still zoned farm. We didn't really pick those off. You want someone to start that. At some point, I think we have to address all of the PUDs in town. If I can find a PUD ordinance or covenants when it was approved in the county, there's often no mention, surprised at this, there's no mention of setbacks or height or anything. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing part of it, or I'm not seeing the right documents. Sometimes I'll see things in covenants that kind of tell what the setback should be, but it's, and the way I've been handling this when we get requests is I'll measure things with GIS or drive around and just say, yeah, this is R2, so then I'll tell them, or RE2, and I'll tell them just use the RE2 standards. And these are in cases where the HOA doesn't have any say or doesn't really care. We've had a couple additions that people wanted to put on or change their roof line or whatever.
Just a
Yeah,
clarification.
yeah, so
This
I
this
just
is
used,
currently zoned a PUD.
Yeah, it's currently zoned a PUD.
Someone comes in, wants to make a change, and you basically, like you say, drive around, look at it, goes, okay. You look at
Whatever,
the-
and I said,
Says
this looks like RE2, so I'm gonna use the
So
RE2
you're gonna- yeah.
standards. I think the height is uniform throughout all of the residential districts, but that's the way I've been doing it, and I think at some point we need to maybe start going back and.
So would a suggestion be, like, could you look at each individual PUD and just say, this PUD should be zoned, or should be, when changes or requests come, it should fall under RE2 or RE, whatever, pick one.
Right, and it'd take some of these subdivisions, there might be 25, 30 homes. You'd want to ensure that you aren't creating a lot of nonconformities for whatever standard you pick. I mean, just something that I think
Long-term.
would be
Yeah.
midterm, I would say.
A midterm,
to long term,
midterm.
not short term.
How many PUDs do we,
And our whole map is PUD.
yeah, that's what I thought.
How did that come about?
County?
It's the county.
Because I thought it was largely just, like Fox Mill and
We should
here
hear it.
and there.
A lot
These-
of
yeah,
them,
these-
it's built with PUDs under the county.
What was
Yeah.
the purpose? Was it just to provide a little bit of variation, so it wasn't all, you have to have one quarter acre lot?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I think it's
so
Preferred
there
array
was
of
the way it was
variations.
developed is my guess. I mean, I can only assume it just started to be developed in.
That must have come from Bill Buck.
Yeah, because PUDs weren't on the horizon.
There
There
may
was
have been
none
a direct-
before that.
Oh, orange, isn't it?
Revised.
Yeah.
PUDs
Yeah,
across
the
that.
crossing or
So
something.
like all that, all that, all that,
Yeah,
yeah,
there are a lot.
yeah. And some are more,
Some aren't very big.
yeah, but you've got some that have huge lots and then tiny lots too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a, you
So
wanna go
maybe
pick
just
the low hanging
mix of
fruit.
lot sizes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
we have-
if those lot differences are in segments or certain areas, then you could have, that PUD becomes two different zoning districts, if it was designed that way.
Yeah.
If they're all interspersed, then it's probably best just to leave it PUD. But,
Some of these maps that have PUD have like RE2, like, this is a 2024 map,
Yeah.
I think, so. But it has like the PUD with a crosshatch, but then it says RE2, so that has already been kind of determined. That
yeah, in
that's
some,
free.
in some cases, yeah.
Yeah,
And others.
because I can see most of them seem to have something like that in them, so. Okay, all right, so that's something, all right.
Is that the correct map?
No, it says 2020, this was the draft of October 24.
Yeah, see, that's what they started to do during the draft. They were taking those PUDs that were labeled strictly PUD, and they were trying to assign a zoning designation. to it.
Right,
So that was
right.
never official for most of those.
Right.
It just said PUD,
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
So this PUD, no zoning.
No, other than maybe residential. That's,
which I can understand, it makes it difficult to, so like you say, if somebody comes in and wants to put a shed up, you're like, well, what's the setbacks, or what's the, what are the restrictions for that PUD? And there really aren't any, right? So you have to find something that's,
Well, then the HOA covenants and restrictions take precedent, really.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
many times, because the village code will allow things that the covenants and restrictions prohibit.
Right.
So,
Also, when we did the new zoning map, even though there's PUDs, we had a new zoning designation for certain areas, correct?
No,
We did
no, we left the PUDs alone.
Did we?
That
Yeah.
was just the.
We talked.
I know you talked a
Yeah.
lot about it,
Yeah.
I just
The
don't
things that were
remember.
zoned farm,
yeah,
were the primarily
Those
the
are our hands.
500 were,
PUD, RE3.
yeah,
like You talked about it.
yeah.
But if it says PUD RE3 and it's on the map, technically it's,
I think this was the
Proposal.
proposed area.
It's like PUD 2 RE3, that's what,
Okay.
what's written on it, so.
I don't recall that it was.
So there's some groundwork.
right, and most of our PUDs don't have the official map that we had prior to the current map did not list a zoning designation of PUDs.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, very, very few cases. And the current map doesn't as well. So that would be a mid or long-term project.
Okay,
They would have to, we'd have to have a hearing.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Do that, right?
right, yeah. You have to notify all the people and have a hearing. And,
you want to fill the room again, don't you?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Getting a little lonely.
no, that's what I say,
I don't know
midterm,
why there's
midterm.
a PUD.
Right, right,
Yeah.
you're right.
and I guess what would be the benefit would be, so that you have more consistent zoning, when people coming in that
Right.
neighborhood, they would be treated, it'd be-
Right, right. You know
everybody
how
would be
everybody
treated
should
the same
Yeah,
in
exactly.
there, yeah, okay. All right. And then I also noticed you talked about possibly accessory structure maximums and accessory dwelling units.
Yeah, I hear this from certain people here at Village Hall, and put it in, so. We had discussed it once before.
Isn't the state going to take care of
I
that
was
for
gonna
us?
say, maybe we should wait till after May 31st for that one.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Uh,
But the maximums for the accessory structures, which turned out to be very generous.
Yeah, it's just that the numbers we had, the first month, was like, all of a sudden you had these gigantic barns that you could
Yeah.
put up there and stuff like that, so. That was not addressed by the board, was it? Or?
I think it was loosened a little bit, if I remember correctly. There was a certain faction contingent of the trustees that wanted it even looser than what we had forwarded, if I remember correctly.
Wow, okay, okay.
But, I can start working on that. Other thing I would like to mention is our affordable housing plan is under review by IDA. That's it, so we're in the submission column now. It hasn't
All right.
been approved, so
Yeah, that's a big step
It's been under
forward.
review for about two weeks or so now, and I would imagine I'd hear from them very shortly. And then I'll need, I'd actually like you to sign the minutes, because they wanted to see.
That's right. I
They
did. I
wanted to
saw the
see
email.
the public notice for the meeting, the agenda item, the minutes of the public hearing. No one made a
Yeah.
comment, but, so I want, if you could sign
Yep.
it, then I'm
Yep.
gonna forward that all off tonight.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. All right. Yes,
Jim?
Jim?
Just, you're talking about ADUs and all this, with the action that Pritzker is trying to do right now to, force looser zoning on all municipalities, is the village taking a stand, or had they been operating with, the IML or the guys next door here to try to, I guess, counteract some of
Sure,
his
sure.
actions? And is there anything that?
There was some discussion at the board level regarding it, and an indication that both Metro West and the IML have been, voicing opposition to it.
The IML has a counter proposal.
Right. So that, not individually, the village hasn't like sent any witness slips in or anything like that, but all of these other councils of governments have.
So we've been participating with those councils,
Yeah,
those
they-
other units to help lobby.
I've seen some of the updates that Metro West has provided to, to staff, but also to the board members, and it includes an indication that they've been pushing back, so.
Nice to hear that somebody's
Yeah.
taking an active stance here at least.
Sure, yeah. But Jim's right there, I haven't fully reviewed the counter proposal from IMO, but I've heard that, they know that there's probably going to be some provision that's going to be approved, so
Yeah.
might as well have some say in it.
Okay.
All right, anything else you want to add, Jim? Nope, that's it? Okay, very good. We get to see Jim one more time?
Right, we will have a meeting June 10th. There's 2 variance applications in,
Okay,
so,
all right.
for accessory structure setbacks. I think both of them
Like a variance or
have,
something?
locations of accessory structures.
Better than a fence.
Just the, yeah. No schools.
Schools, yeah. Yeah. All right, if I heard nothing else, no other comments, concerns, then I'll take a motion to adjourn. Neil's is gonna make the motion. Andres seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. See you next time. Thank you very much. 7:59.
Less than an hour.
Okay. Productive.
Well, thank you very much for coming. Everybody appreciate it.
Yeah.
So you still flying? You still flying?
No, 11 months I've been retired.
Okay, I didn't know what your thoughts were about the jet fuel issues and all that.
Doesn't bother me.
Doesn't bother you?
I don't think about that stuff anymore.
I thought you were gonna refer to the Denver incident.
Oh,